that they are going to deter the fighting spirit, the indomitable spirit of our enigma, Raila Amolo Odinga. Raila Amolo Odinga, please take your time, relax, make phone calls to your fellow leaders across Africa, thank them for the vote they gave you, take time to reflect, and when you come back home, let no one try to direct Raila Amolo Odinga on which direction he should take or on which action he should take. He is a man who knows only one thing, and what he knows is what is best for him. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank President William Ruto. It is not taken for granted that when a Kenyan comes up to run for a continental position, that the government will support that Kenyan. Mr. Speaker, just next door, we have a friend of ours called Olaro Tunu. Olaro Tunu at some point ran for the Secretary General of the United Nations. Olaro Tunu was originally Ugandan by nationality, but because of local competition, Olaro Tunu ran for the UN Secretary General position as an Ivorian citizen and not as a Ugandan citizen. Why? Because the government did not support him. A Ugandan could take the citizenship of another country to run for a global position. So, Speaker, if we didn't have mature politics in the country, we would have found a situation where Raila Amolo Odinga is running for chair of the AUC with a South Sudanese citizenship or with a Ugandan citizenship. But William Ruto took this as Project Kenya. It was not Project William Ruto. This was Project Kenya. This was Kenya sending their best son to the continental stage. And William Ruto, we thank you because you walked the talk. You walked with the candidate. You opened doors for the candidate, and you allowed Raila Amolo Odinga, despite the political competition, a candidate for Kenya rather than a candidate for any political formation. I want to urge the government of Kenya and also urge this House. Mr. Speaker, the sessional paper on Kenya's foreign policy was laid on the table of this House last week. We now have an opportunity to weigh in on Kenya's foreign policy. I know that my colleague, Senator for Kisii, Senator Onyonka, is one of the most exposed and experienced diplomats in this House, having served as an assistant minister for foreign affairs. Honorable members, you have an opportunity to weigh in on Kenya's foreign policy. And I want to request the Speaker to direct the relevant committee. I think it will be the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, if not the Foreign Relations Committee, that they must bring back a report to this House. They must scrutinize that sessional paper. They must get views from experts. They must look at it and confirm that Kenya is adopting a foreign policy that is pragmatic. That was the position of the founding fathers of this. They said we face neither east nor west. But they said we are going to face the direction where the wind will blow in our sails. And that should be the position that this generation takes. There is nothing fashionable about being seen as pro-American or being seen as pro-Chinese. Those are constructs that do not matter to us. We shall face the direction that adds value to the lives of the people of Kenya, the direction that is willing to partner with us in achieving our developmental objectives, and the direction that is respectful to the people of Kenya. So, Speaker, that then also ensure that even I heard some people say that we should withdraw from the Africa Union, withdraw from global committee. So, Speaker, we should never make the mistakes that we saw the Brits Brexit. We should never make the irresponsible decisions that we have seen the Americans doing under Trump, saying that they're withdrawing from the World Health Organization, they're withdrawing from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, they're withdrawing from the Kyoto Protocol. We cannot go for isolation. We cannot go for a situation where we are left alone as pariahs in the global world order. We shall continue supporting and fulfilling our international obligations at the Africa Union level, at the East Africa Community level, where Kenya is the current chair. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to congratulate Djibouti that their candidate is now the chair of the Africa Union Committee. I do not know much about the gentleman who has been elected to that position, but as you have said, this election was not just about the individuals, it was about the nationalities that fronted those individuals. Mr. Speaker, as has been said by the Leader of Majority, our president now has been given a rare opportunity to propose reforms at the Africa Union Commission. Mr. Speaker, I also recall that a good friend of this House, Ambassador Amayo, Ambassador Amayo is a good friend to this house because every time and everywhere he was posted, London, be it Washington, whenever a Senate delegation came, welcomed the Senate. Unlike many ambassadors who look with contempt at members of parliament, and Honorable Speaker, I can confirm that everywhere I found Ambassador Amayo, he was very respectful of parliament. He's also now Kenya's representative in the Africa Union for reforms, and that is a seasoned diplomat. I hope, working together with President Ruto, they'll be able to deal with the key issues that need to be transformed at the Africa Union Commission. In Africa, Mr. Speaker, there are still a lot of challenges that we now must ask the new Africa Union Commission chair to settle down and not to be drawn into Kenya's political and toxic social media wars, that he should now settle down and deal with the key challenges that are facing Africa. When Kenya proposed Right Honorable Raila Odinga to be the chair of the commission, we knew that the challenge that was ahead of us. In Africa, the Commission or the Africa Union has a target to silence the guns in Africa. Unfortunately, the guns are raging even louder. They are raging in Sudan. They are raging in Somalia. They are raging in Nigeria in the fight against Boko Haram. Mr. Speaker, the guns are not silent in Africa. That is what we are now challenging the new chair of the Commission to get down to business too, and not to go around in political rallies in Djibouti trying to rub it in that Kenya did not get that position. Mr. Speaker, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area was a matter or an idea that was excellent. It was mooted just around the time of COVID. Today, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, Mr. Speaker, is non-operational because sovereign states are still unwilling to deal with the tariff and non-tariff barriers. They are still unwilling to align their legislation to build one common market in Africa. Mr. Speaker, within the Africa Union Commission or within the African territory, we have a coup belt that is running from West Africa through the Sahel, coming into Central Africa, and if you are not careful, it will go all the way to the Indian Ocean. Mr. Speaker, it is said that in Africa, you can travel from West to East Africa, going through countries that have got military dictatorships and leaderships that came to office through coups d'etat. That is the reason why the Africa Union was established, to deter leaders from taking over power through coup d'etats. Flights are still very expensive in Africa. If you want to go to West Africa, you have the unfortunate situation where sometimes you have to go to Doha or to Dubai for you to be able to land in Accra or to land in Guinea-Conakry. Those are the challenges that we expect that the new commission chair will deal with. Mr. Speaker, I want to finalize by urging fellow senators and urging all Kenyans that, having seen the situation and the terrain in the African continent, let us now turn to our country and make our country great. Mr. Speaker, the phrase, love your neighbor as you love yourself, appears in the Bible not just once. It appears 3 times. It appears in the book of Leviticus, the book of Mark, and the book of Matthew. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. We cannot love Africa more than we love Kenya. This is a time for us to come back to Kenya and make Kenya great again. Mr. Speaker, we need to make Kenya great again. And I, as a leader of the Homa Bay delegation, am willing to partner and work with all the leaders in this republic who are willing to make Kenya great again. We are not going to make Kenya great through negative ethnicity. We are not going to make Kenya great through division. We are not going to make Kenya great through revisionism, where we want to go back to history and dwell on the justices or injustices that have been committed to us. Mr. Speaker, we will only be respected in Africa if we build a strong economy. Our economy is not growing at the rate that will make Kenya a superpower in Africa. We cannot afford to be growing at 4 or 5% when Tanzania is growing at 7%. We must put all our thoughts, our attention and efforts on growing an economy, and the least metric should be 7% annual growth. That is when we'll be respected. We have this misconceived notion that Kenya is still a great economy. We could be great now, but Mr. Speaker, if you remember the mathematics of approaching speed, there are smaller economies that are approaching us at a higher speed than we are moving. And if we are not careful, we'll be the smallest economy in East Africa. So, Speaker, we must spend on our military, and this is a conversation we must have. We are spending only 1% of our GDP on the military. And yet we are seeing guns pointed at Kenya from all corners. We are seeing drones pointed at Kenya from all corners. Mr. Speaker, the war in Syria has confirmed that your enemy does not need to be your neighbor. That Turkey can hammer Syria from wherever they are. That even Kenya can be hammered from Yemen. Kenya can be hammered from the UAE. This is a time for us to ask ourselves, our military getting the right budgetary allocation? And are they making the right decision those budgets? Mr. Speaker, every time we go for a public holiday, we see those jets flying past. And to be honest, Mr. Speaker, since I was a little child, the same jets I've been seeing flying past. I wonder if there was a serious strife or any battle between Kenya and a neighboring state, whether those jets will be airworthy or whether they'll be able to go and attack the enemy. We must have that conversation. This idea of saying that the military is a closed black box that we cannot talk about, we have a weak military, no one is going to give us respect. You have seen instances where in the old saying that the tail can wag a dog. We are seeing a tiny country, and I'm not going to mention names, a tiny country being able to ambush, attack, invade, and overthrow the president of another country which is 100 times its size. Mr. Speaker, this is a conversation we must have. We must come back to our education system. At some point, Kenya was a regional superpower because of our advanced education system. You had Ugandan professors coming to teach. You had children coming from other countries to study in Kenya. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, this is the reason why diaspora remittances is our highest forex earner, because we trained and built a very strong pool of professionals. Mr. Speaker, I am willing to partner with a government that is willing to look at the CBC and to make the right decisions to make the CBC fit for purpose so that our education system still becomes attractive to the region. Mr. Speaker, our health sector, people from Tanzania a long time ago, they used to ask, why should you go to London for treatment when you can come to Nairobi Hospital? Why should you go to Germany when you can come to Aga Khan? Or when you can come to even Kenyatta National Hospital, Mr. Speaker, at some point was attracting tourists, medical tourists from the region. Those are the quiet ways of strengthening yourself on the continental stage, Mr. Speaker. It is not about how loud you are on Twitter. There's this thing called KOT, Kenyans on Twitter or Kenyans online. You only project strength through certain attributes, not noise making and not attacking other people online. Mr. Speaker, we need to go back to our transport sector. Our comparative advantage as a country, part of it is our location. It is geography that allows us to have a port, almost midway from North to Southern Africa. The port of Mombasa is a gift from God. Our location is a gift from God. Mr. Speaker, we must modernize the port. And I am willing to encourage this government that if we cannot get civil servants and bureaucrats who can modernize that port, then we'd rather seek a strategic partner, Mr. Speaker. Of course, a strategic partner procured in a transparent and open manner. We have gone with the liaison committee. We went to DP World, and some members here, we went to DP World, they told us the kind of operations they're running all over the world. They're running ports in Manchester, they're running ports in China, they're running ports in the US, and us, we want to turn our ports into theaters for appointment of tribal and political loyalists. Mr. Speaker, we are not going to make it. Kenya Airways has been the pride of Africa, but of late it has become the shame of Kenya. Kenya Airways is another form of expression of strength on the continental stage. But Mr. Speaker, every time we travel, even members in this house would prefer to travel to fly Ethiopian, Emirates, Qatar, and not Kenya Airways. These are the fundamentals we must come back to. An SGR we built terminated nowhere, some field in Naivasha. How can you have an SGR that terminates in some place in Suswa, and yet there is no last mile for connectivity? We must put money, even if we are taking a loan, Mr. Speaker. I will support a loan request for extension of the SGR from Suswa to go all the way to Kisumu, to go all the way to Malaba, to go all the way to Uganda. That is how we can be relevant to the people of Uganda, not by shouting, but providing connectivity to them. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I want to urge the relevant committee that our foreign policy must be examined by this House. I want to urge the people of Kenya, that when a Kenyan is out there on the international stage, we have an obligation to cheer them on. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we are going to have a situation where one day Faith Kipyegon is breaking a world record, and half of Kenya is cheering, another half is not cheering Faith Kipyegon because she comes from the same. That is where we are heading to. We have an untidy situation where Harambee Stars is playing and scoring goals. Half of Kenya is cheering, and the other half is not cheering because the team has Ogola, Onyango, Wafula. We cannot build a country that is that petty. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge that this conversation in this House will be different from the conversation we had yesterday in the other House, and it will be different from the conversation we have had elsewhere. Because when it comes to issues of the original sin, we have a lot to say about the original sin. The first deputy president to be thrown out of office without ceremony was Jaramogi Oginga. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga picked himself up, not go inciting hateful tribal sentiments, went and formed the Kenya People's Union. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was put in house detention. His son Raila Odinga was in detention for 8 years, fighting for this country. When he left detention, he didn't come out bitter. He didn't build artificial warriors and soldiers. He did a handshake with President Moi, which was unthinkable because for him, he was concerned about making Kenya great. There are people who have suffered in this country. And I don't want to make parallels. I don't want to draw comparisons because then we will be trying revisionism. So, Speaker, let us focus on making Kenya great. Negative ethnicity, the divisions that we are seeing, the belittling of certain communities that we are seeing, even in parliament and out there on the social media, is not going to work for this country. So, Speaker, I want to assure you that as perhaps one of the longest-serving members in this House on this side, and as you know, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to opposition, we know all the tricks and we have the stamina. We shall work together with a government that is committed to making Kenya great again. William Ruto, not be distracted into negative ethnic conversation. Make Kenya great. Fix our military, fix our economy, fix our logistics, fix our health, fix our education. Make Kenya a Silicon Savannah, and you will have the unlimited support. Senator Moses Kajwang, ODM Brigade, and by extension, Raila Odinga. Mr. Speaker, I second.
According to the African Union, and two, the continental body, 5 member states of the countries, the African continent, and peace of Africa, dynamic force in the arena. However, the African Union Commission, AUC, was established as the secretariat responsible for the operations and activities of the AU, and then by the chairperson elected by ends and government from members. According that on 27 February 2024, Kenya formally announced that the former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, NGH, will be vying for the position of chairperson of the African Union, putting that regionally he served as the African Union Special Envoy for Infrastructure Development. The HE President, Excellency the President, endorsed the Right Honorable Raila Odinga as Kenya's candidate person of the African Union Committee. I have some sympathies with my brother, majority. Noting that the Honorable Raila Odinga's candidature for the position of the chairperson was not only his personal ambition, but also a symbol of Kenya's deep commitment to the cause of the African Union and its desire to participate in the continent's commending the government of Kenya, led by His Excellency the President, for a robust campaign in support of the candidate, caused by continuation and cooperation and guided by Kenya's foreign policy. Further commending the remarkable achievement by Right Honorable Raila Odinga for emerging the run-up in the election of Chairperson of the African Union Commission on Saturday, 5 February 2025. Recognizing the need to sustain Kenya's growing prominence on the continental stage and advocacy for a more united, prosperous, self-reliant Africa, in resonance with the aspirations of millions of Africans continent, empowered to chart its own course in the arena. Now, therefore, the Senate, one, expresses its profound thanks to the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, NGH, for demonstrating unwavering commitment to the service of Africa by offering his candidature for the chairperson of the African leadership in advancing Pan-African unity, for his dedication to the development and integration of the African continent, and for his distinct attempt to reckons it thanks to His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, CGH, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces of the Republic of Kenya, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, NGH, as Kenya's candidate for election as the chairperson of the African Union, and for coordinating the campaign in candidature. And three, seconds his congratulations, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, election as the chairperson of the commission on Saturday, 15. Now we open the floor. First shot will be taken by Senator Wamatinga Wahome, Commissioner from Nyeri County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. As I rise up, contribute to this motion.
Sorry, Senator, just a minute, Senator Wamatinga. I will recognize the visitors, then I will not interrupt you as you take your 20 minutes. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this morning visiting lecturers and political science class students from the Masai Mara University, Narok County. The delegation comprises of 5 lecturers and 72 students who are in the Senate for a one-day academic. Now, issue tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them and on behalf of the Senate. With the House, Senator Olekina, Masai University is a national university. Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to welcome the students and teachers of Masai Mara University. Not just a student, I also served as a vice president of the student. So I wish to welcome you and also tell you that Kenya is a land of opportunity. Let nothing deter you. The young people, you're the leaders of today. Taking effort to see what the Senate does goes a long way to changing the style of leadership in this country. That I want to, that you will be part of that transformation. When you go back, please take my greeting back to the University.
30 seconds, the Senator for Narok County.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for at least acknowledging that Masai Mara University is national university. Not like your cantankerous fellow, Meru, governor who thought Masais don't wear underwears.
It's not from Meru. Maybe put to a record straight.
Oh, not like the cantankerous governor from Meru. It doesn't matter whether you've Yeri. I don't know. Just because it's cantankerous. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Let me take these 30 seconds to welcome these young students. Just telling them that all of us who are standing here went through that rigorous training. I'm a science major. I know what it takes to be able to forge forward and to be able to navigate through tough challenges, especially when it comes to politics in Narrow County is a great county. I'm happy that most had an opportunity to study there. Hope that we continue improving, making sure that you encourage even local students in that area. Take on political science courses, that leadership, future. You know, people talk about the future generation being the not. Future generation is another generation which will come after this generation has already been. I hope that you will nurture the talent. Always, when you go back there, ensure that your agility, education is the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Proceed, Senator Wamatinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. As I was just about to start, I'm reminded by today's debate of the call that we have as a leadership of this country. And I would want, Mr. Speaker, sir, start by thanking two people. One, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to start by thanking one Raila Amolo Odinga. His ability over the years to bend backwards, put this country forward, Mr. Speaker, has been a challenge to many of us. It is known, Mr. Speaker, and it is on record. I am one of those who many years have always opposed the leadership of Raila Amolo Odinga. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, having said that, I want to put the record straight. It is not because I have any justifiable reason. It is because, Mr. Speaker, sir, I've always been persuaded to think along ethnic and regional bloc, Mr. Speaker. But time has come to realize that this country is greater than any one of us, Mr. Speaker. The second person, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank is His Excellency, the President William Samoei Ruto. It is indeed, Mr. Speaker, a great act of statesmanship to take somebody, propose somebody who you've competed with for the presidency and say, I propose the name because I think he's qualified and deserves it. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I'm standing here, I look at the photos and the people sitting on the gallery, young people who are looking upon us for leadership to unify this country so that we can live a country united for them. Mr. Speaker, sir, the whole world is moving to become a global village. It is not lost to us, Mr. Speaker, that the strength and the strategic geographical position of this country will highly benefit if we have regional integration in the Greater Lakes region and indeed in the whole of Africa. Speaker, many a times has the President, His Excellency President Ruto said, it is time that Africans started taking their own matters in their own hands, and that must start by making a unified monetary unit where we can allow ourselves to trade without having to rely on foreign currencies like the dollar. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is the high time that we look at a statesman, somebody who's able to move this country, this continent forward, somebody who's prepared to sacrifice, and we know this person is embodied in the person of one Raila Amolo Odinga. And I want to agree with people. Mr. Speaker, sir, the losing of Raila Amolo Odinga is not a loss to himself, it is a loss to this country, it is a loss to the whole of Africa indeed. Mr. Speaker, history will judge us unfairly, as some of us have withdrawn to sectionalism, some of us have withdrawn to tribal cocoons and trying to champion their tribe's beliefs without telling the world the truth. There is no one tribe that can survive on their own. Mr. Speaker, sir, many have touted Usuguze Mulima. What is most unfortunate is that the Mulima, in its homogeneity, in the product that they produce, in the coffee, milk, and tea, we are not able to consume that. Our potential lies in the regional integration, not only the Mulima region, the whole of Kenya, but even extending this to beyond Africa. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is why I'm standing here as a proud Kenyan, to say that yes, Kenyans have realized that we have a potential as a country when we integrate everybody into the leadership of this nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, indeed unfortunate that some few people, for their own selfish reason, chose to celebrate the failure of one Raila Amolo Odinga because they believe that their political future lies in Baba joining hands with them. I want to tell them, oh, unto them, Mr. Speaker, we have woken up and we're no longer going to do tribal politics to befit one person. Mr. Speaker, sir, show me your friends, I'll tell you who you are. I've heard some people, my colleagues, without wanting to discuss them or name them, saying that they be removed from the chairmanship of committees. I would want to challenge them. Tell your community, as you are the chairman, what did you do for your community? Mr. Speaker, sir, it is high time that we must rise and be counted like Kenyans who look at the issues of this country not as a tribal approach, but rather a holistic approach that takes care of political and moral obligation that we have to this young generation. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have decided to face the reality as it is. Somebody has said the survival of the Mulima depends on one person. I want to collect that assertion. The survival of Mulima depends on our able and ability to integrate with every person in this country, regardless of where they've been. That is the true position, and that is what we must tell everybody. This is the light of Mr. Speaker, sir, that we now move forward unified towards regional, towards world integration in the whole of Africa. I was in Angola the other day, Mr. Speaker, sir. I realized the potential that we have to do business in that country is huge. It cannot be, and it is not acceptable. At this time when everybody is moving towards making regional blocks, towards moving people together like the EU, like the United States, somebody is telling us, usichiguze Mlima. Mr. Speaker, sir, that is not only outdated, it is retrogressive, and it must be condemned in the highest and the hardest political terms as possible. Tomorrow belongs to a future generation, and we have a political and moral obligation to ensure that we bring Kenya together, because Kenya cannot stand in and divided into tribal cocoons. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also want to thank those who stood with the Raila Amolo Odinga. Not because he's a Luo, not because he's a Kenyan, because he's a statesman who has the political experience and exposure to see things in a broader perspective. It might please my people, Mr. Speaker, sir, they oppose Raila. But then I'll have a political responsibility, and history will judge me so harshly that I did not make the right decision. And as has been said here before, Mr. Speaker, a win for any Kenyan is a win for every Kenyan. We must now rise beyond petty tribal politics and say the problems that we face in this country are not tribal problems. They are problems that we can only solve as a unified country. As I wind up, Mr. Speaker, to give my colleagues an opportunity, I would want to take this opportunity to apologize to the Ma community. I had my governor made very retrogressive comments about them not wearing suluaris. Mr. Speaker, I heard him say, it is not what you do, it is who you follow. I want to put the record straight. It is what you do in terms of development. If you bring development to us, if you bring meaningful change to us, then we'll stand with you. It is the high time that we say this country is greater than any one of us, and we say united we stand in this country. We must fight for African integration, we must fight for globalization, and we make sure that Kenya is an integral part of that, not being put in ethnic balkanization, because that is outdated politics. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support.
Thank you. Next is Senator Onyonka Richard.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members of country. Mr. Speaker, I am literally shocked where my colleagues are being and what they are saying on this floor. The reason why I'm shocked is because somehow I happen to be advantaged because around this system for the last 25 years. I have been around taking vehicles to Kabarak to go and see President Moi and beg him to hand out that I could run for election. I have seen what happened in 2007 when we came to this house and I saw the hate, vitriol, the anger. What were we fighting about? An election which had lost, and of course we were on the other side which lost, quote. And we stood here and said how we wished anybody who was on the other side should have been dead. I have watched the coalition government work, and then it failed. This republic, I have seen President Uhuru come into power and his elections are nullified, and I've seen how he handled it. And I have seen how President William Ruto becomes president. So I hope my colleagues will give me an opportunity to lay out my case. This election of Prime Minister Raila to the AUC, indeed it was about our country. This election was not really about Raila per se. And I've seen some people say, oh, this election was about President William Ruto, and if he's a bad president, therefore our candidate wouldn't win. No, I take a different approach. The reality is we went in to hunt. I am saying I don't think we were prepared to hunt well and kill the elephant. My argument is we have a country where we are constantly looking for options and solutions away from the reality of what we are dealing with. I have heard my colleagues say that there were people celebrating that in fact Raila lost. Yes, they celebrated because they are fearful. They want Raila to come back because the country looks unstable and it's not ready. That is where we are, Honorable Cherargei. This is not about tribes ganging up against bigger tribes and smaller tribes ganging against smaller ones. This is a state called Kenya, which is dysfunctional, where we have refused to accept the basic tenets. We have said, Honorable, my majority leader, you know I respect and love you as my brother. Thank you. I hope one day I'll join government and be with you. But I intend to remain in the opposition to keep some of you sober and sane. This process, because of the training I got when I was a minister in the government of President Kibaki, is a process which is handled quietly, efficiently, and successfully. When you are going for these positions, you must be able to look at the sensitivities and the issues in all these geopolitical issues of Africa. And yet, what have we done? We have localized this whole thing as if it's about Raila, who wanted to be something, and William Ruto, who wants to survive. Indeed, if that is the case, if Raila wanted the job and felt he would lose and come back here so that he joins President William Ruto's government, and therefore Kenya will become stable, my position is very simple. So long as you continue doing things the way you are doing them, the country will not be stable. When we were talking about what are the issues in Sudan, look at what you're having at KICC today. One group is at KICC parading themselves, and you are insensitive to the issues that we are supposed to be the arbiters of two people who are fighting on the African continent. When we are talking about Congo, the reality, my brother Cherargei, is that we have a region which is affected by illegal mineral mining, by countries that are feeling incredibly insecure. You have Western powers who have an interest in managing what is happening in Congo. And the reality is we just laugh at it. So when M23 are coming to Nairobi to come and have a meeting here with our president, the simple fact that they came here put everybody onto suspicion mode.
Just a minute. Mandago.
Honorable Speaker, I've heard Senator Onyonga say M23 coming to whether it's confused.
Came to Nairobi, met our president, they launched themselves here. What did you expect President Kagame to do? What did you expect him to do? When information is coming out that all these groups are meeting around Nairobi and we are not
Senator
careful.
Nyonka, there is a point of order still from
I was just wondering whether the
Senator Mandago.
operations of parliament have. Can Senator Onyonga provide evidence that M23 came to Nigeria, met the president and joined themselves? I think it's a dangerous statement allowed to go on record without evidence.
Substantiate. What
Yes,
question are
proceed
you
and
asking me?
substantiate.
That, Mr. My Chair Health, what I said was this. Anytime when you have these groups that are fighting in the East African region, and one of them appears to be Nairobi, what it happens is it creates a destabilization which sometimes is imaginary. And yet the expectation is just like South Sudan. When the earlier group, or when the first group that was against the government came to Nairobi and they
Senator
met.
Nyonka, let me give you not clear that he needs an evidence to show that M23 came to Kenya, met the president and launched them.
What I said,
Maybe if you don't have that evidence, when are you ready to provide the evidence?
Mr. Speaker, what I said is that the M23 made contact, and indeed, the president of Kenya's responsibility was for him to start negotiating with them and the Rwandese government. What I am saying is, those discussions as they started.
Did you say that they came to Nairobi?
I said yes.
And met the president?
Yeah, no, I said they came, yes.
No. No, I don't need any direction from the members.
Say what you're saying.
That is why I'm here. I'm listening
Why?
to the members.
I don't know why you don't want me to talk. Mr. Speaker, let
Senator,
me make it easy for you. I withdraw.
Okay, fine.
And I apologize for my majority. Can I proceed?
Proceed.
So let me say, so that you don't waste my time, let me say what I'm saying. We, as a leadership, must understand that whatever that was happening is not removed from our reality. Just as you're planning to organize so that Prime Minister Raila can then go for his election at AU, what do? You allow individuals to pick Besigye and they abduct him and take him to you. Internationally, Honorable Cherargei, you know that looks bad. Then when you are busy talking about South Africa, I know some of us may not understand that the South African government, having gone to Congo, the responsibility and the role they have played in Congo and all the issues that have been engaged must be handled so carefully. But what do? And I said it on public. We then decide we are going to support Israel. Because the Israelis are our friends for years and years and years, and we make that announcement disregarding the sensitivities of what is happening in Gaza. Then we take that same narrative as we are having issues.
Senator Nyonka, there's another point of order from.
Mr. Speaker, I'm really sorry to Senator Onyonka. It's not my intention to disrupt him, but he's inviting this upon himself by claiming matters that are not factual, which leaves us with no other option than to interrupt him and ask him to check his records. I know for a fact that not once, twice, or thrice that Kenya has made its position clear on the Palestine-Gaza dispute, that they believe in the two-state solution. We have never come out clear to say that we support any of the parties. Therefore, it is not right for Senator Onyonka to mislead the House
Mr.
and
Speaker,
claim that we have identified with Israel to the exclusion of the Palestinians. That's not accurate.
Mr. Speaker, could I maybe use a different,
Senator
maybe
Nyonka,
let me use a different angle to
when
make.
there is a member.
Mr. Speaker, I feel like you're trying to harass me so much. I am saying,
that is the rules of the House. When there is a member.
Speaker, I know the rules, but you see, if I keep going that way, it's a bit tiring.
There's a seat just next to.
Right.
But
and I've got his point, which I can
You should
answer.
not take advantage of the mic to just exchange with the member who has appointed.
Much obliged. I would most probably answer him and say, let's leave the Israeli question. Can we talk about the rapid deployment force that is in Nairobi? You can legitimize, you can argue about it. So you are comfortable the RDF is in Nairobi. And the other Sudanese party is in Sudan, and they have written an official letter today where they are saying that you have actually violated their very essence, existence as a state. That is how, so you've been, you see, Mr. Speaker, you see, your colleagues are now answering me because they don't want me to make my arguments.
With the member on the floor.
Just finish my debate.
No. And also, Senator Nyong, just talk to the...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to say that I see here today my colleagues celebrating and talking about how Raila is the greatest man who was. How I wish we listened to what they are saying 3 years ago. How Raila was a mganga, how he was somebody who was completely useless to our political dispensation. Where, by the way, why have you never gotten rid of him? Now, today is being praised of being the hero worship we wanted. Raila has been a hero worship, yes, but we will expect him to give us the excellence we expect from him. He will join your government, and if he's not going to demand that abductions stop in this republic, that we stop the corruption that is going on in our country, that we actually govern ourselves with responsibility, where we accept that our countries within our region respect us and we respect them. And then I saw my brother Cherargei going to Ethiopia. You carry 250 people who are singing Yote Yawezekana. You are threatening other African guys, ladies and gentlemen, who visited the occasion.
Remember, Senator Nyonka,
yes.
One thing that I didn't do when it was on the floor, I protected you.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
When you mentioned your name.
Yes.
So can you kindly stop mentioning the members?
Oh, my apologies, my leader.
So that you,
I apologize and withdraw. You were not there. You were not there.
You are eating on your time.
Mr. Speaker.
Be having ample time to give a point.
Much obliged,
Mr.
Mr.
Be disrupted all the time with the
Mr. Speaker, I am much obliged. I would like to say this. I want to say, I get that, but he was there.
Senator Chalagay, stop exchange. Allow him to continue. What is your point of order, Senator Wakoli?
It's a chariot, my brother. Mr. Speaker.
Nyonka, let us listen. So I will ask the clerk, when you are misusing my mic, clerks. When the member is on a point of order, switch off the other mic, so that now we can.
Honorable Speaker, I'm standing on order of responsibility of statement of fact, Honorable Speaker. When an honorable member stands here and casts aspersions on the delegation from Kenya, we might not agree with you, but when you say they were intimidating, can you table facts that Kenyans, headed by the president, were intimidating people in Addis Ababa? This is a Senate. This is not a small thing in the village. Honorable Senior Senator, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to mention to my brother, the senator from Bungoma, that normally when people go to watch football games, that's how they behave. But when people go to an international conference and they're trying to negotiate and influence other people to vote for their candidate, they behave differently. I know you love football. You may not see the contradiction. I want to say this, Mr. Speaker. It is true for many of us that for me, Prime Minister Raila losing that seat was a shock. But I saw him accept the verdict gracefully. I would like to state to my colleagues in this House that if such an occasion comes back again, because it could, please let us make sure we do a thorough job. Let us consult the ambassadors, former ambassadors, the technical personnel. We could have done it better. Is it true that I knew this? No, I didn't. I'm just saying, when you go to play and you have scored many goals, then you have to figure out what to do with the team, especially with the team manager. I would like to say one last comment, Mr. Speaker. I have no problem if ODM and my leader Raila decides to join the government of the day, because I understand the complexity of Kenya's politics. But, Mr. Speaker, I heard somebody say, give me something that I can be proud of. Give me democracy. Make sure we minimize our corruption. Stop using negative ethnicity of turning around and saying that because you have disagreed with people who you have struck a deal with. And indeed, by the way, Mr. Speaker, I listened to this House severally. Some of these contradictions we have are a consequence of the broken system of our governance structure. Why is it that every 5 years the vice president is fighting with his president? Why is it that we are not able to deal with the dysfunctionality of our financials in this republic? How can we talk about Kenya as a great country when you know we are in debt, we can't finish a railway, the revenue we are collecting, we don't even know what's happening, the county governments are having a problem? Then you expect me to have something to be proud of. I am proud to be a Kenyan, yes, but I expect more. I expect better from all of us. Stop cheering around and singing how you think now power has come to your hands. You are going to employ your relatives and cousins. No. We now need intelligent people to sit down and guide the president and the prime minister to make sure this country runs in the direction where we can be fully proud and happy that we are moving as a team. Stop alienating some communities because of political disagreements. Sit with them and talk with them. Majority Leader, aren't you sitting with the gentleman there with big hair? I wanted to make a reference. Thank you.
Onyonka, you know you are CISO.
Yeah? Mr. Speaker, I'm a bit emotional about this. Allow me.
How can you describe Honorable Medu in that manner?
He accepts the I wanted to say how beautiful I see both of you. You have disagreed politically, and yet you are talking. That is how it should be. Let us not escalate it to the next level. I see us escalating this war to the next level. And I want to mention finally, Mr. Speaker, that whatever it takes for this Senate, whatever it takes all of you, for the next 2.5 years, this country has been left in your hands. Make sure the leadership listens what the Kenyan public is saying. Especially, I heard somebody trying to dismiss the role of the young people. Some of us are just saying it purely. Please listen to these young people. And it's not about me wanting to be on TikTok. I've heard some of my colleagues always jump up and say, yeah, I'm at 6 million views. Those things don't matter to me. I don't even have to come back to this house again as a senator or any leadership position, because I am extremely disappointed at the way we are carrying ourselves when we are advantaged. When we are not disadvantaged. When we are disadvantaged, we behave differently. When we are advantaged, we behave differently. It is convenient. This state does not convenience. This state needs factual analysis, evaluation, and conclusions on matters that are going to help us govern. The president should succeed. He should listen to us. What is working, let him continue working on it. What is failing, can he stop, fix it, and then we move forward. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. From the onset, I want to this motion by the majority leader. I wish to make a few comments. One is to congratulate the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga for running this race. As many of my colleagues have said, it was not about Raila Odinga, it was about Kenya. And I think Mr. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we left Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and I'm happy by the comments of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga when he says he's coming back more energized and more focused going into the future, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the 22 nations from African Union who stood for the 7 rounds, Mr. Speaker, for Raila Odinga. 2 rounds he emerged, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it is not easy to go 7 rounds. We know people who go 1 minute and 59 seconds, Mr. Speaker. But at this age, Baba Raila Odinga could manage to go for 7 rounds. African Union, Mr. Speaker. So we celebrate and appreciate what he did. 7 rounds at his age is not easy in African Union contest, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, as a country, every cloud has a silver lining, Mr. And I don't know why Senator Amida is excited about the rounds. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to digress. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, I want to assure the nation, and even, Mr. Speaker, thank President William Ruto for magnanimity. You remember in 2022, the presidential election was close call. But out of magnanimity of President William Ruto, when Raila Odinga declared that he will run for African Union, President William Ruto did not look at Raila as the opponent that he defeated in general election. He looked at him as a brother, as a statesman, as a Kenyan, and that is why Raila Amolo Odinga had at his disposal the entire government machinery to campaign across 51 states of Africa, Mr. Speaker, and share his vision for a better Africa, Mr. Speaker. I was disappointed that some people in parts of this country, others in social media, could celebrate the loss of Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga never lost anything. It is Kenya who lost, because it is the standing in the League of Nations, Mr. Speaker. Let us not confuse. If it is about losing, Raila has developed a thick skin of losing many elections, Mr. Speaker. But he has always looked at the brighter. He has been the safe pair of hands when Kenya is in turmoil. From 2007, Mr. Speaker, in 2018, and the other day in 2022, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say what the people who celebrated on social media and some parts of this country, we tell them, riswa na washindwe katika jina la Yesu, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, number 2, it is not the first time, Mr. Speaker, that Raila Odinga as a Kenyan has lost. Even Nancy Kirigitu lost. Even Rachel Mamo lost. Even the latest Amina Mohammed lost in 2017. We never saw this kind of vitriol and hatred, Mr. Speaker, against a candidate like Raila Odinga, Mr. Speaker. I want to tell the nation, many people thought when Raila lost in AU, some people could be used to fight government, or unto them. It will not happen, Mr. Speaker. Because as a country, we have more better agenda to have a prosperous nation going into the future in governance, in development, and in rule of law and democracy, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud many Africans. There have been argument that the position of Kenya in DRC crisis, the position of Kenya in issues of Gaza and Israel, the position of Kenya in Sudan crisis, where we saw rapid response here in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, and many other positions of Kenya across the world. But, Mr. Speaker, we must accept that beyond and above African Union engagement, there was the issue of religion, language, and region, and also superpowers. And I'm happy my brother from Homa Bay has said, Kenya should not look east or west. We should look where our interests are as a country, Mr. Speaker. Because we cannot depend. You saw the other day when Donald Trump came, he came with a different policy. China or the East have come with a different policy, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is neither here nor there that we are arguing today that it is based on many forces. But we know after African Union, as a continent, there are many international and global interests, whether they come from East or West, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, for Raila Odinga, as our candidate, as a statesman, as a Kenyan, Mr. Speaker, to stand on the annals of history and look for this seat, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate. It is not easy. Even in local elections, like ward elections, we have seen people who say we will run, we will run. But when the real game is called, they are nowhere to run even for award election. And that will happen in 2027, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, what is the future? As we congratulate His Excellency Mohammed Ali Yusuf of Djibouti, although I saw his speech and I was disappointed that we had more money and more power, Mr. Speaker, I thought he would have been more magnanimous. You know, in victory, under 48 laws of power, in Robert Greene, you should know when to stop celebrating. It is one of the basic tenets of 48 laws of power in Robert Greene, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and therefore it is very unfortunate to come from him when he wants to unite the country. He will be the biggest envoy. Senator Onyonga will tell you, His Excellency Ali Mausuf Mohammed will be the biggest envoy of Africa. And therefore he should give a message of hope, of unity across the African continent, Mr. Speaker. We expect him to handle the DRC crisis, the Sudan crisis, Mr. Speaker, and many other crises that we face as a world, as a global nation, Mr. Speaker. The future of Africa, we need to agree. We need to ensure we trade more in the trade within Africa region. Why would I need a visa to travel to Ghana or even to South Africa, Mr. Speaker? And we are Africans. We should promote a visa-free Africa, where one African even work. There are many students from Masai Mara University. I wish to see them working in South Africa as experts or as civil servants in South Africa, in Namibia, in Ghana, in Tunisia, Mr. Speaker, in Djibouti, among other countries, Mr. Speaker. Number two, we must encourage open-air skies. It's unfortunate sometimes when we are flying to West Africa, you must fly to France so that you can fly back. It is more nearer to fly to London than to fly to some of the West Africa, Mr. Speaker. We must agree that we must promote open skies and aviation, Mr. Speaker, so that we can go into the future, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, as I talk, the reforms in Kenya Airways is long overdue, Mr. Speaker. We must, Mr. Speaker, we must ensure that we encourage Kenya Airways, which was now pride of Africa, is disappointing, Mr. Speaker. I saw even the Nigerian embassy, Nigerian civil aviation penalizing, Mr. Speaker, penalizing the KQ.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, you know, everything that we say on this floor goes on record. Senator Chiragei knows that under our standing orders, do not make statements that are misleading. He has just stated this floor that to fly to West Africa, you first go to France, then come back to West Africa. Yet, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Airways flies direct to several West African countries, including Nigeria, direct to Nigeria, goes to Cameroon, goes to Bamako in Mali. In order, Mr. Speaker, make a misleading statement on the floor that the skies in Africa have not been opened to our...
Senator Chelagei, which country were you referring to?
Amira, Mr. Speaker, what I said is some flights. I didn't say Kenya Airways. It needs to, you can check the answer. I say some flights. I did not say Kenya Airways specifically. I just came into Kenya Airways by saying we must revive Kenya Airways, we must revitalize Kenya Airways to turn around profitability. Because the way Kenya Airways is being run is being run down, Mr. Speaker. And the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, one of our key components was aviation turnaround in terms of increasing cargo to ensure we give more revenue to Kenya Airways. And we have had a discussion about Kenya Airways. We must agree that even as we ensure there is open skies and aviation sector in Africa, we must make it vibrant so that is movement of people and services, Mr. Speaker. And I can see the senior counsel is nodding in agreement that Kenya Airways must be reformed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of military cooperation, I agree. We need to work more better. We have seen even, and I'm happy President William Ruto has requested African Union to include Haiti as one of the member of African Union, Mr. Speaker. And we are proud as Kenya. We have read the mission in Haiti, Mr. Speaker, despite opposition from even within the country and outside the country. And therefore, as Kenya, we have a lot to showcase the world in terms of issues that we... So military cooperation, I know when African Union and Kenya is called upon, We have crisis in DRC, Mr. Speaker. I am told the M23 are making progress in Bukavu. They are headed near to Burundi, Bujumbura. We must Africa, Mr. We have Sudan crisis, where rapid response RSF is in Sudan, in Africa, in Kenya here. And I have seen the statement from Foreign Affairs from Sudan. We must pursue peace the way we did for South Sudan, Mr. Speaker. We need a peaceful Africa to ensure we have trade. And the only person who could bring experience, who knows the dynamics of Africa, the true son of Pan-Africanism was Raila Odinga. I still insist African Union lost the best. Despite that, His Excellency Ali Mausuf won. Winning in an election does not mean you are competent. It means you have just won. But it doesn't mean that you are bringing the best on the table, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Raila Odinga, with so many years that he has fought for rule of democracy, human rights, devolution, the new constitution, the track record was well decorated that could transform this. And Raila Odinga has been one of the few leaders who is not tribal. See at the voting pattern in many elections he has contested in this country. He has gotten the votes from across the country, Mr. And therefore, we need to ensure. The Speaker, the third point I wanted to make, I think it is now the right time to fully implement the NADCO report, the National Dialogue Report. Raila Odinga has huge and well-decorated track record of fighting for democracy, rule of law. When Raila Odinga was fighting the previous regime, some of the people who are in opposition, Mr. Speaker, who are now correcting messes, were in that government that were pursuing even abuses of human rights, and they want to lecture us about, Mr. Speaker, how a country should be run. When Raila Odinga was fighting for this constitution, rule of law, democracy, some of the people who are correcting him, Mr. Speaker, who are fighting him now, were in that system, Mr. Speaker, the KANU system, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, when Raila Odinga comes, we can use him. He has huge, he's an elder statesman, Mr. Speaker, and in full implementation of NADCO, we must make Raila Odinga the Prime Minister of the Republic of Kenya. Even the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Prime Cabinet Minister, he must, Mr. Speaker, be given that position to assist in expanding, deepening, and widening the broad-based government and stability of this country, Mr. We have even started, Mr. Speaker, we have even started even broad-based within Parliament.
Senator Methu, what's your point of order?
I wanted to up the Andy, but I'm standing on Standing Order 105, statement of fact. May I know, because I have read the NADCO report page by page, last page, which of the recommendations of the NADCO report he bases his argument that Raila Odinga is one that will become the Prime Minister. Because our position of the Prime Minister will be there, but there is nowhere in the NADCO report that it proposes the Honorable Raila Odinga. Actually, I don't think the NADCO report was formulated to assimilate and have Raila Odinga join government. Actually demeaning the position of Raila Odinga, so that the whole NADCO report is just about creating a for him. So, Honorable Speaker, I wish that you direct this and find the Senator out of order for insinuating that the NADCO report has a clause that proposes that Raila Odinga, the person, becomes the Prime Minister.
Very well, Senator Cherargei. I think you've understood the question.
Yes, I've understood. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for seeing you today in the morning. Speaker, as I encourage, and after this I will buy an air comp for my brother, Senator Methu, I agree. In fact, he has answered himself by insinuating. I didn't say the NADCO report has the name Raila Odinga. As a leader, I believe Raila Odinga should serve this nation in any capacity. And in my own opinion, as the Senator of Nandi, I feel he should be given the position of Prime Minister. We need to expand and fully implement the National Dialogue Committee report. We are already doing broad-based. We are now in this across the aisle. We are exchanging chairs within Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I want to insist, even as we move forward, as we broaden the engagement of broad-based government, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, Mr. Speaker, has the history of this country. He has the track record of rule of law. He has served as a Prime Minister before. There is nothing unique, Mr. Even as we push to amend the Constitution in Article 257 or 256, either by popular or parliamentary initiative of the Constitution 2010, he can serve at the moment as the Prime Cabinet Secretary as we reorganize the government going into the future, Mr. Speaker. Even Senator, it is free, my brother Senator Metu, and he knows I have tremendous respect and we respect each other. We are even pushing for an indictment of official opposition leader. So as they fight in this formation, Mr. Speaker, I'm telling them there is already a seat where the people like Wajakoya, people like Alonso Mushoka, people like, and the rest who will lose in 2027 after William Ruto is re-elected by the support of Baba, they will be automatically, will finance them. We'll give them an office, we'll give them official cars, we'll ensure they sit either in the Senate and National Assembly. And that is the NADCO report that we are proposing, Mr. Speaker. So no one will lose. We hate to see people who are so losers who are shouting in centers, funerals. We want them to stop talking from funerals. We want them to come to the floor of the House and critique the government. And I want to assure you, with the support of Raila Amolo Odinga, William Ruto will be elected by over 80% for his re-election. In 2032, people like Eddie, tunaweza anza kujipanga at that level, Mr. Speaker. So I want to say in conclusion, because I've seen my time is spent, Mr. Speaker, let us have an open mind. This nation, the young people sitting at your gallery, need the guidance and leadership. We must agree as a nation. We want a nation. When you go here to Tanzania, they don't care which tribe you come from. You are a Chaga, you are a Sogoma, you are a Maasai. They don't care who you are. They will only elect you because you are competent, Mr. Speaker. So we need to encourage as a nation. Let us have a tribeless leadership, Mr. Speaker. And I want to encourage the minority side led by Senator Ledama. Even as we engage on broad-based, you must clean your house. We cannot be saying we are broad-based, yet we have people who are opposing the broad-based within yourself, Mr. Speaker. And I know you know the person you are sitting next to you on your right, Mr. Speaker. It is better to give that seat to Senator Hedy and other people, Mr. Speaker, so that you can have a one united front. Let us release people like Senator Wambua to go and oppose government freely instead of opposing government within. This is a broad-based government. May it long live under the leadership of William Ruto and Raila Odinga. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I support and I thank you.
Senator Eddie Okech.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And as the leader of the Migori delegation, I must say that on this motion, my people who gave me the chance to be in this house are sad. I will not lie that they were disappointed that Raila Amolo Odinga did not become AUC chair. I had hopes and dreams that Raila Odinga would become the AUC chair so that it could be able to be a bridge between excellence in the continent and our people in Kenya, and indeed the people of Migori County were championing and rooting for Raila Amolo Odinga. So it is no question that they are sad. And Mr. Speaker, in any sad situation, whether it's death or losing an election like what happened, Speaker, if you are sad and somebody else is laughing, that person does not want the best. It doesn't matter whether whatever brings you sadness is something that brings them happiness. It just means that they don't want something good for you. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that anybody who has laughed, celebrated the loss that we had in Addis has got no best interest of our people at heart, especially the delegation representing from Migori County. I remember, Mr. Speaker, Nelson Mandela, when one day he was asked by a journalist on his take on the Cuban positioning in terms of the Cuban War with regards to other people as well as Muammar Gaddafi. And Mandela told the journalist that many people think that their enemies are supposed to be South African enemies. Just because you have got some enemies somewhere, they are not going to be ODM's enemies. We as ODM, and we as a people from Migori, and we as a people from Nyanza, and I believe this is the spirit that every other nation that finds himself or themselves in the corridors of the country called Kenya. We don't make enemies because other people have enemies. We treat people with the same attitude that they treat us with. That is the area with which we differ with many people who celebrated this. But that said, Mr. Speaker,
Senator Cherargei, would you like to be informed by Senator Cherargei?
Senator Cherargei is a very serious ranking member. Let him inform me, but within a short time.
I'd just like to, a lot of indulgence to Raila. It was not Cuban war. It was a Palestinian war on the issue of yellow. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, you know, Cherargei. Anyway, thank you. But Mr. Mandela was asked the question on the issue of his relationship with the Cuban fighter, we call him Fidel Castro, and also on the issue of him with Muammar Gaddafi, who tend to have been very polarizing figure in a number of, it was not just one war, but a number of issues that affect the entire continent at that time when South Africa was being seen as a terrorist nation just because they were fighting apartheid in South Africa. And his thinking was that any relationship that they're making with people or any friendship that they're making with different people is based on how those people treat South Africa, not based on the enemies that those people have. And that's what I'm trying to say also, that our politics as ODM going forward will be based on how people treat us and how people respect us and the contribution that we make to the country. But that said, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that there is a Swahili word that says Mugala muue aki mpe. Despite the differences that different people have with President Ruto in the borders of our country, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we are very grateful for the kind of support, for the kind of commitment, for the kind of dedication that President Ruto gave to Raila Amolo Odinga in the process of running for AU. And I want to tell the President, Mr. Speaker, that there's a book that Chinua Achebe expresses about a lizard that fell out of an Iroko tree. You know, this lizard fell out of an Iroko tree onto a rock, but the lizard did not break its back. And around it, because it's just a lizard, other animals were there, but they were not able to celebrate the lizard. So the lizard looked around, and because nobody saw the lizard dropping down as something big and not breaking its back, the lizard said to itself, I am so strong that I fell out of that Iroko tree, but I didn't break my back. I'm telling the President that even if some people want to close their eyes on the kind of support that you gave Raila Amolo Odinga, even if somebody will not say thank you to you, even if some people will talk negatively about it and try to put you down, be the lizard that fell off the Iroko tree and thank yourself because you know how much effort you put on this campaign. That's a very sincere thank you from me. But then I must also thank Raila Amolo Odinga, because taking a continental stage in a place that you don't have control, His Excellency the PM Raila Amolo Odinga, taking a serious continental stage in a place that don't have control of presidents, when people are not bold enough to take that step, that is valor, that's a towering spirit that we want to see of many Kenyans. And I hope that many young people can glean morals from the courage of Raila Amolo Odinga to be able to take some risks. That even you as a young person today, whether you're Gen Z,
or you are millennial, remember the times that perhaps you grew in Kawangware and you could play some games, some card games, and people could discourage you, but you never saw why you should not take the risk of being in the streets. But then, today, you are something. Raila Amolo Odinga has taught us that you can keep on fighting and taking risks for dreams that are bigger than you. And if your dreams as young people don't scare you, you're not worth living. Take big dreams. Take big steps. Learn from Raila Amolo Odinga. He has fought big dreams that some of them today we are benefiting from. There are countries that have got internet today, but you cannot post things and talk about anybody on the internet because you fear that you'll go to jail, because you fear that you'll die, because you fear that you'll have serious consequences. But in our nation today, many young people enjoy not just the social media platform, but they enjoy any kind of expression that they want to have on those platforms. It is not to be taken for granted that those rights that you're enjoying to be able to express yourself online are not just rights. They are rights that saw people like Raila Amolo Odinga battered, beaten, and taken to detention for you to have those rights. So even as some people try to put him down, that valor, that courage, and that towering spirit must live among young people in the country called Kenya and in the African continent. But that said also, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Odinga did not just show up on this race as just a candidate who had no contribution to make to our country and who just wanted a job. On February 27th, last year, Mr. Speaker, Raila Amolo Odinga did express himself, the agenda and the vision that he was bringing to this position. And I want to agree with what my brother Senator Kajwang said, that this vision that Raila had is not just vision for the sake of getting an AU position. It's a vision that we as leaders in this country, extended to leaders in other countries that believe in the African dream, and more so, extended to the leader from Djibouti, my brother Ali Yusuf, who has taken this position, must cast their eye upon. Because African continent is constantly under threat, Mr. Speaker. The movement of goods, the movement of capital, the movement of labor in the continent to make a working economy is still a daydream that we have never achieved. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of AU is not just about regional politics in the African continent. It is also about global politics, because we are competing with other continents as well. We have got China, which is a nation and also as big as a continent with populations of over 1 billion. We are competing with them. We have got America that we are competing with. And don't think that the advancement of a common market in the African continent is something pleasing to other people. And therefore, it's a commitment that cannot just be an issue of politics in the continent. It's an issue that the continent must commit to, the dream that Raila had, from making sure that goods and services can move with this robust infrastructure. Raila Odinga held a very strong view on why we must make sure that we silence the guns in the continent and ensure that there's security so that capital, goods, and people can be able to move in the continent and work and build a continent. Raila Odinga held the strong view that we need serious connectivity between Djibouti and Senegal, between Cape Town and Cairo, so that movement of people, goods, and services can be easy. Raila Odinga held the very strong view that the continent must have a single visa so that moving around the continent can be easy, so that a Kenyan who is born today without opportunities in the country called Kenya can as well move to Nigeria easily or move to Egypt easily and be able to find opportunity for themselves. So that somebody who is in Egypt, who cannot find their talent meeting the opportunities in Egypt, can move to Kenya and find opportunity that works for them. The dream of Raila Amolo Odinga was a continent where you are born does not define whether you die or you live. That dream must live with the people of Africa. That dream must live with the President of Africa. And Mr. Speaker, it is not a small dream. It's a dream for which some of us who went to Addis Ababa and saw what happened in Addis Ababa have picked that dream, we will continue with it. That one day, if not us, our children will see a united continent on the basis of economic excellence, on the basis of social justice, on the basis of politics that is good, that can advance the quality of life for the African people. And those dreams will not die because Raila Amolo Odinga cast them on that stage called the continental stage. It's not a matter of light politics of just being in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we have seen in this continent young people being radicalized because of lack of economic opportunities, economic emptiness, turning young people to be Al-Shabaab militia, economic emptiness, turning young people to be Boko Haram militia. And we see that same kind of trend even in the continent today, that people who the country had no confidence in, when they were serving at highest level and they were impeached in these houses, Mr. Speaker, radicalizing even young people who are in this house. You find young people being made to sing Mau Mau wars, to dress like Mau Mau, to live themselves unkempt like Mau Mau, to start behaving like Mau Mau in a way that is radicalizing people who are elected to come to this house to be able to promote a concept of national unity, promote a dream for young people in this country, and they're being radicalized. Therefore, we must start thinking, Mr. Speaker, we must start thinking of how we can be able to make sure that economic opportunity and good policies for young people are made possible so that radicalization of young people can stop, not only in Kenya but in the continent.
Eddie, Senator Wakoli, what's your point of order?
This is an honorable house of distinguished high-profile leaders. My good brother, Honorable Eddie, has alluded that honorable members are dressed like, look like, hair like Mau Mau. Honorable Chair, it's important for my good friend to have responsibility of statement of facts, but coming out clearly and showing to us among members here or those without. Who is it that looks like Mau Mau? Hair like Mau Mau. So that the Honorable House is cleared of any misconduct. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Speaker, thank you. It seems like the senator, the good senator from Bungoma, is the only visitor from Jerusalem. I will send him some pictures of Mau Mau, people who fought, and then he can make his own judgment. Look at people around who look like Mau Mau. But that said, Mr. Speaker, I must say also that we must also accept the negative that happened in this area, called the fighting for this seat. I want to encourage the majority leader that let's not be blind to the fact that foreign policy in this country is still not sober. And there are positions that you can take as a people that must be based on our foreign policy. Today, Mr. Speaker, whether you are a Democrat or you are a Republican in the American politics, when it comes to certain issues, America has clear foreign policy about them. And I don't think that we don't have a foreign policy that works. I think that we don't have a domestic policy that works. Because if you've got a strong domestic policy, Mr. Speaker, then you extrapolate your foreign policy from your domestic policy. What is our policy about our businesses, Mr. Speaker, for instance? That our businesses that are locally grown, homegrown, must be protected, must be taken care of. If that is our domestic policy, then that becomes the interface with which we interact with the external world. If our foreign policy here around our resources is strong, then that becomes the angle with which we relate with other countries. It is no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that the first round and the second round of Mr. Odinga's votes, he had consistently been ahead of Djibouti. And even if we don't know who voted because it was secret ballot, Mr. Speaker, we can say without a doubt that the shift started happening when the candidate from Madagascar dropped. And that shift, when it happened, we saw the Djibouti candidate gaining votes. Therefore, even if we are not mathematically sound, we can argue that there is high likelihood that the people who are voting for Madagascar shifted to Djibouti. And that is an indictment to our foreign policy. Why did they shift in that direction? It means that we haven't chosen as a people that on certain issues that are cross-cutting in the continent, whether it's the DRC war, whether it is the coup in the continent, a number of coups are in the continent, whether it is the issue around Israel, whether it's the issues around Commonwealth, all these issues, Mr. Speaker, must have one inclination. They must have an inclination towards a sober domestic policy that defines how then we engage the external world. It has to be that our nation must advance our national interests first when we are approaching the world, because that is the only way we survive as a country. And there are a number of areas that I think that these particular laws gives us an opportunity as a nation, gives the president an opportunity as our leader, gives the executive an opportunity as the cabinet, and gives us as a parliament opportunity to be brave, to be courageous, to be honest to ourselves, and interrogate the strength of our policy when it comes to our domestic inclination. Because if we don't interrogate that and bury our heads in the sand, Mr. Speaker, we will not be stronger tomorrow to face such wars. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I must say that Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, His Excellency Baba, is a person who has got zeal and zest to have a country that works. Even at instances that in the past regimes, Baba has supported some elements of people in governance. He has never taken any opportunity or discarded any opportunity to talk about the ills that are in government, to talk about the excesses that are in government, and to talk about bad things that are going on in the country. Including recently, when we were dealing with the issues of abductions, Baba Raila Amolo Odinga stood firm and fought abductions. And so are his soldiers who fought abductions. I can assure you that Raila Amolo Odinga does not need to be told where he's going to go. When he comes, after resting, he will give us direction on where he stands and where he goes, and therefore speculations must...
Thank you, Senator. Senator Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to join my colleague in recording the thanks of the Senate on Kenya's attempt for the position of the chairperson of the African. Speaker, I want to begin by saying that this is an important debate. A debate that was moved very well by the majority leader. But when debate began, I wondered what happened between the time that he moved motion when the debate began. Because from one side of his mouth, he said that he would want to listen to opinion members as to where we may have gone wrong and lost this. But the other side of his mouth, insisting that got it right. So I wonder then what. Speaker, having said that, I want to begin by thanking His Excellency, Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, for offering himself to vie for this seat. Speaker, the decision to offer himself as a speaker, was a courage and spirit of Pan-Africanism. I liked and envy the energy of His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga And Mr. Speaker, he was able to move every corner of the continent to convince presidents and heads of government to support bid. That energy, Mr. Speaker, was really, really enviable. Mr. Speaker, the thing that really touched my heart was the fact that Excellency Raila Amolo kept his throughout this process. From the campaigns, even to the election date and the announcement of the results, our leader kept his cool. And I remember, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, there are people that they closer to this. And Mr. Speaker, before the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga went to Addis for the election, I spoke to him. And he was very clear in his mind what he was going to be doing. And to me, the words that ring to my mind to date is that if I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. Whether I win or I lose, I'm a Kenyan, I am a Pan-African. Speaker, that is courage beyond measure. And I want to congratulate him for having that courage to go for the seat. Mr. Speaker, when Raila Amolo Odinga went for the election, it was not about him. It was not about party or his coalition. It was about Africa. And it was about carrying Kenyan flag highly on the African scene. And Mr. Speaker, His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga did not disappoint. He carried the flag of our republic on the continental scene and did the best that he could. We want to congratulate him, the Speaker. We also want to thank the presidents that voted. Garnering 22 votes throughout, the Speaker, I think 3 or 4 election cycles, Mr. Speaker, is not a simple feat. We want to thank the presidents that had faith in his leadership and voted for him. Mr. Speaker, there is another notion that I want to bank the floor of the Senate. People who say that Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga does not exist. Excellency himself considered it on the floor of the Mandela House during this election. What I want to say to those people that Raila does not accept or consider is that if he loses fairly, he will accept a CD at Addis Ababa. If he loses unfairly, he will contest that election. He has done that before, and for that courage, I also want to thank and congratulate him. The Speaker, Kenya may have lost the election. We may not have brought Africans. But I want to say that to a very great extent, as a country, we won our space on the African. And let us continue to try as much as we can to be the pride of the region. Mr. Speaker, let me also congratulate the winner of the election, Yusuf, and wish him well. We shall live to fight this battle another day. The Speaker, having said that, the question that the majority leader posed, I would have wished that he was here, on what it is that we could have gone done wrong? What could we have done better? Mr. Speaker, I think that's where the conversation should sit. Mr. Speaker, it is very, very unfortunate that our foreign policy does not serving our national and interest in the way that it should. Speaker, I heard Senator being put task substantiate obvious. I just want to urge all of us to be truthful to facts and the reality of our time. The Speaker, when in December of 2023, the Congo River Alliance, bringing together opposition politicians from DRC and the March 23 grouping, the rebel group, in Nairobi, and they launched the operation. The Speaker, it is open to everyone, even school children, that on that account alone, Kinshasa withdrew their envoy from Kenya. Protest. It's on the record. At the same time, Kinshasa even threatened to withdraw from the East African community and actually recalled their ambassador who was sitting in Tanzania. That's the question that we should ask ourselves. If we had handled this matter of M23 Nairobi differently, would the results have been different? Those are the questions. And as leaders, we cannot. As a Speaker, I listen to colleagues speak times and I wonder, if His Excellency, the Right Honorable Engineer Raila Amolo Odinga, was speaking the language of some leaders who speak on the floor of this house when he was our age, where would he be? Where would this country be? Mr. Speaker, Raila Amolo Odinga is not a person that is given to psychophancy or praise singing. He will say it as it is. And I'm very sure on the matter of the activities of M23 and the the Congo River Alliance, their activities in Nairobi, I'm very sure. I don't even to ask him. I'm very sure he takes a very different view from that taken by the executive, the national executive. Mr. Speaker, today, the quest for the AUC chairmanship is not the end of Kenya's quest for leadership in the region. There will be other positions that other Kenyans are suitable for. And I want, for the avoidance of doubt, to state that some of us consistently have believed in the leadership of Raila Amolo Odinga. We have campaigned for him. We have voted for him for many, many years. The people that speak here as though Amolo Odinga, other people, have never voted for him even once. If anything, they have demonized him most. Mr. Speaker, the engagement of Kenya and our neighbors is not ending with the end of the elections in Addis Ababa. Mr. Speaker, what we did, what we allowed to happen on our capital yesterday, the Speaker, was not right. And he must tell his government. As much to allow the rapid support, their involvement in the crisis in Darfur. the killings, the torture, maiming of people. And we allow those groups to lobby and pretend form a government of Sudan from Nairobi, Mr. Speaker. What do we expect? What do we expect, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we have not had last from the administration of General Buran, who is now running some form of administration. These people have messed up the country. Our role as a neighbor should be to help these people come together and rebuild their country, not to take sides with one rebel group against the other rebel group. The Speaker, that move, it is those kind of moves, the Speaker, that we are saying, you know, the M23 move, the Speaker, let's just face it. On account of the Congo River Alliance being formed in Nairobi, and the fighting now in eastern DRC, the takeover of towns, South Africa has lost many soldiers. Tanzania has lost many soldiers. Let us just ask ourselves as human beings. The president of South Africa, the president of Tanzania, the president of DRC Congo, when they went to cast the ballot in that reality, where were they likely to cast their ballot? Because these are the questions that we should ask ourselves. And stop being psychophantic or emotional about things that we can see as leaders are not going the right direction. Mr. Speaker, I want to advise, and I keep saying that I am maybe the least qualified to advise the National Executive. This country belongs to all of us. Those who support the current administration and those who don't. All belong. And Mr. Speaker, the presidency of this country is not coming to an end with the end of the term of office of President William Ruto. Beyond him, there will be presidents. Before him, there were presidents. The thing that we must do is to ensure that while he sits in office, we have a stable country. A country with a very robust and good foreign policy that protects the national interest, but also takes care of the regional interest and the global interest. I like what Senator Eddie said. The Speaker, being at the continental scene is not just about the continent. It's about our engagement with the outside world. It's about a continental economic bloc. The Speaker, as a country, Kenya, we must make sure that we play a rightful role in that conglomeration, Mr. Speaker. We cannot be a country that is pushed to the periphery on matters foreign policy, while in pursuit of interests that could be very, very personal. Mr. Speaker, lastly, I want to reiterate that I heard Senator Cherage make a very loose comment about people that have stood with Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga when he fought for the democracy. Speaker, I don't agree with Senator Cherage a lot. On this one, I agree with him. I want to ask him, go and check his records and tell this country who those leaders he's talking about are. Those leaders who never believed in the provisions of this constitution that Raila Amolo Odinga pushed for. Those leaders whose business, the primary business, was to demonize Raila Amolo Odinga, what he stood then. Where I come from, Mr. Speaker, the Christian, the new converts have a lot of zeal, but to the faith.
zeal. Believe that maybe they have gotten today and tomorrow they are going to heaven. So they have a lot of zeal. Those of us who are old in that religion, our work is to just hamper the zeal, let them pull it down. So, world will come to an end. Jesus Christ will come back, but it will happen at the fullness of his timing, not at our timing. The new converts in the political, I want to tamper, move slowly. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Support.
Senator David Wakoli Wafula.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Nashukuru sana kwa nafasi hii. Naona ndugu zangu upande wa walio wachache kwa leo wanatabasamu Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu pole na sifa ambazo tunamiminia Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga kama mpeperushaji bendera katika Afrika kuwakilisha nchi ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, mgala muwe na haki mpe. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga amekuwa kielelezo cha ustahimili wa demokrasia katika nchi ya Kenya. Amedhihirisha jitolea muhanga kutetea haki ya mnyonge wa nchi ya Kenya, kutuliza mawimbi ya kisiasa katika nchi ya Kenya, na vile vile kunyosha mkono wa heri njema kwa wapinzani wake wa kisiasa, tangulia na Mheshimiwa Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, Mwai Kibaki, Uhuru Kenyatta na sasa Mheshimiwa William Ruto. Mheshimiwa Spika, hivi ni vielelezo ama sifa za viongozi bao kwao Afrika ilikuwa inaona nyota ilikuwa imeangaa kule angani. Mheshimiwa Spika, Afrika imepoteza kiongozi shupavu, kiongozi aliye na msimamo, kiongozi anayeheshimu itikadi na falsafa tofauti katika Afrika, kiongozi ambaye anaelewa changamoto za watu wa Afrika, na hivi kwamba tajriba aliyonayo katika siasa za nchi ya Kenya, kwamba alikuwa mmojawapo wa viongozi katika Umoja wa Afrika aliyekuwa anashinikiza na kusimamia miundombinu katika Afrika. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga amekuwa mtetezi wa haki za kibinadamu. Juzi amepasua mbarika na kupeana msimamo wake kuhusiana na vifo na kupotea kwa Wakenya. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga na wengine vile vile amekuwa mojawapo wa wale ambao wamekuwa wanashinikiza serikali za kibepari kubadilisha mfumo na kuongoza nchi zao kwa matawi na katika kufuata katiba za nchi hizo. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga vile vile ameonyesha dunia nzima na Afrika kwamba ni lazima kufanya biashara kati ya nchi za Afrika, kuboresha uchumi za nchi ya Afrika, na ilidhihirika walipoungana na Mheshimiwa Mwai Kibaki kuleta mfumo mpya wa kiuchumi na kusisimua uchumi wa Afrika. Nimesikiza seneta wenzangu wakitaja na kupokezana makonde ya kisiasa kuhusiana ni nani ambaye anamfuata Raila Amolo Odinga kwa haki na kwa matendo. Mimi naomba kwamba tusiwe vinanda vya kisiasa Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini tutende kulingana na maazimio ya Wakenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, Raila Odinga anashinikiza kuwe na demokrasia na vyama vya kisiasa. Viongozi walio hapa lazima wasimame kidete na tuseme kwamba katiba inakubali vyama vya kisiasa. Katiba inakubali kwamba kuwe na uhuru wa kisiasa na mahusiano ya kisiasa. Sasa mimi nataka kuona viongozi wenzangu chipukizi, tunaposimama kando na kuwa vinanda vya kisiasa, sisi sasa tuwe watunzi wa nyimbo za demokrasia na kutetea hadhi na falsafa ya demokrasia katika nchi ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga amepigana vita dhidi ya ufisadi, na naamini angetoa uongozi wa Jumuiya ya Afrika, angeongoza mapambano dhidi ya ufisadi katika nchi za Afrika. Changamoto nyingi zinazoendelea katika nchi za Afrika, vita vinavyoendelea ni kutokana na ufisadi. Mimi naomba kutokana na jumba la Senate tuone viongozi wakisimama kidete kupigana vita dhidi ya ufisadi katika nchi ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, Raila Amolo Odinga amedhihirisha kwamba kusulubiwa kisiasa sio mwisho wa safari. Aliwekwa korokoroni, akaondoka, na si Biblia tunasema Paulo na Sila waliomba, milango ikafunguliwa. Wengine wetu pia ni wajukuu wa kisiasa, tumewekwa korokoroni na tukatoka. Kile tunataka kushukuru Mheshimiwa William Samoei Ruto ni kwamba ulijitokeza muhanga, ukamshika mkono Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga. Viongozi wote wa upinzani wasiokuwa upinzani walitembea na nyinyi katika baraste ya kuombea Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga afueni na utoe ushindi katika nchi ya Afrika na katika nchi ya Kenya. Mimi ni kuomba tu kwamba tuendelee kufanya kazi kwa pamoja, tuendelee kufanya majadiliano ya pamoja, tuendelee kupigania haki za Mkenya na Afrika, ili siku itakapokuja tutaulizwa yale tuliyotenda kwa mujibu wa katiba na ujio wa siasa za nchi ya Kenya. Kwa hayo mengi, kwa niaba ya watu wa Bungoma, kwa niaba ya watu wa mkoa wa Magharibi, kwa niaba ya chama cha kisiasa ambacho kimebobea na kina ukomavu mkubwa wa kisiasa, chama cha Ford Kenya, kilichokuwa uasisi wa demokrasia katika nchi ya Kenya, tunampa heko na kongole Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga kwa kupeperusha bendera ya nchi ya Kenya, kumshukuru Mheshimiwa William Ruto kwa kujitokeza muhanga kama rais wa nchi ya Kenya na kutembea na Mkenya mwenzake. Mimi ningewaomba wale wenzangu ambao wana wivu, wana moyo na inda mioyoni mwao kuhusiana na Raila Amolo Odinga, iwapo hauwezi kupiga hatua mbele, usimuonee mwenzio aliye na hesabu na aliye na uwezo wa kupiga hatua mbele, kwa sababu hatua hiyo ndiyo Kenya inastahili kuchukua ili tulete ukombozi na urejesho katika nchi yetu. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga, nakutakia maisha mema unapoendelea kuongoza mchakato wa demokrasia na kuungana na Mheshimiwa William Ruto. Sitaki kumsahau Papa wa Roma, Spika wa Bunge la Kitaifa, ambaye yuko papo hapo kuhakikisha Kenya ina. Asante sana na Mungu awabariki.
Senator Ole Kina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in by stating the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga for being where heading a person and African Union Secretariat and the administration organ African Union. If he did not, we would have had a situation where the elections. Speaker, what Right Honorable Raila Amolo stated African continent, that the leader, not all, has all. I was a young student, course on international. That is when I knew the comes to dealing with issues, national relations. African continent subdivided into two, Anglophone. These two separate ideologies are very complex. Anglophones, countries of progress, always shown forward. Unfortunately, most of them always been left. And you can see in the reason, you can see in our country, Anglophone countries manage to be able to leapfrog on different sectors. Look at Kenya as an example. Kenya developed the first money transfer, be able to less fortune who are in rural areas to be able to also get banking service. Not something that is found across the continent. 55 countries. If Raila Amolo Odinga had been given the opportunity to become the chairperson of the African Union Commission, able to advise by President, able to use his wisdom, all the different organs of the African, so that we achieve African Union goal of 2063, where we have good hospitals, where we have good road networks, where we trade, this continent would have had a very different. But that never happened. And in fact, if you compare the two candidates, I dare say, even in terms of understanding of the role that the person of the African Union Commission, Raila Amolo Odinga, is much above the gentleman who. And this is easily demonstrated by the speech of the gentleman who was now declared the winner, when he came out and said, oh, they came with money, they know, but we only came with God, shows a completely different understanding of what that role is. What I expected of Ahmed is that he would have said, and now here as a continent, my role now is to act as the key advisor of all these 55 presidents. A lot of people did not understand that Raila, a person, African Union, the African Union established in 2001 and commissioned in 2002 as an organ of policy to support African Union heads of states. Created Council of Governors, where you have Secretariat of the Council of Governors advises 47 governors that we have in this country. So people took it differently. But that demonstrates, that shows how powerful Raila Amolo Odinga is. When you sit with the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, he'll tell you that the vision he has for Africa is to unite the Nile, trench the Nile, that transport. We can have transport directly from Egypt coming down to East. I hope that now, new chairperson of the African Union would be able to borrow that. Raila Amolo Odinga. Have what Raila Amolo Odinga. I'm still available. My advice to the African, many other positions, that shows maturity comes to Africa. We're a continent divided. And unless we all sit down together and reevaluate the 2063 goals of the African Union, by 2063, we'll still find African countries that still people beg. I'm tired of seeing. I'm tired of going to our county of medicine just because of the algorithm that is developed by international community or India, United Kingdom, US, when it comes to selling all their drugs to this country, that we cannot even develop our own drugs to be able to help our people get better. We just have to depend on this algorithm. I think it's about time that even if Raila Amolo Odinga did become a person of the Africa, it is time for us to sit down, Excellency Amolo Odinga, say, can you please demystify your vision that even here in Kenya can be able to develop our foreign policy. We can be able to develop our foreign policy in a way that it assists us to develop this nation. Oh, when you sit with certain cabinet secretaries, the amount of wealth that we have in this country is enough to allow us to pay all our debt, to allow us to be able to lend money to other countries. These are things that we need to be discussing now. If we invest heavily in the mining sector of this, we can be able to develop our economy. That's why when I sit here, the text message that I receive, the potential of my own county of Nam comes to mineral. Overwhelming. When I receive text, the potential of where my good friend, the vice chair of PAC comes from. Better. The potential, that county, the potential of, in terms of the mining sector, that is enough to be able to help us leapfrog. Speaker, this current debate where America is talking about America first, where Germany is talking about Germany first, where they are saying now it is time for us to be Americans. If you're a foreigner, off and go back to your country. I think it's about time that we take that unfortunate policy direction, make it better for us. Always take something negative and make something positive out of there. If we can get these African brains who were economic refugees in America, who are economic refugees in Germany, come back and commit themselves, can then be able to make. Yeah, I see this as a great opportunity for discussions on how we are going to end poverty in this. Not only talk about the war in DRC, Congo. No, only the bearer, the wearer of the shoe that knows where it hurts the most. When people criticize the president of Rwanda for taking a particular comes to this issue of the war, the conflict with DRC, they are not the ones who are going to receive all those who are going to drop into that. It is only him who knows the position. So when my colleagues talk about us or criticize the current president of this republic that he should have taken a different position, the position that SADC wanted. Yet, His Excellency President William Ruto, the chairperson of the East African Commission, what do they expect? Go there and deviate from the role that the East African community want, for him to go and give his. I think it is important for all of us to understand the dynamics that it is important for us to understand what is in our interest. If we have our neighbors being stable, it helps this country. If Rwanda is stable, Kenya is assisted. If Tanzania is stable, Kenya is able to trade with Tanzania. But now, when we say that because other countries want a particular position, do we even go back and ask ourselves, what is this position? What exactly is fueling this position? When you take some time, try to understand the dynamics, look at the economy of the DRC, a lot of minerals. When you look at the economy of South Africa, a lot of minerals. Anyone who wants to be able to have a position contrary to what others want to align themselves by, they say, we're developing these minerals ourselves. So let us bring our interests together, and that cases. Just jump in and we say, yes, go. Might end up Speaker. But Excellency Amolo did something that me, I will always remember him. Someone who has put interest, only Kenya, African continent, first. Some of us, some of our own, just or personal moments, even contemplating saying, since the position of chairperson advise on policy, on the economy, politics, as well as other areas to do with social affairs. And then we converge, we come together. Why don't we say the Anglophone countries have one commissioner, chairperson, the other one has another commissioner, so that we now come and say, these are our social issues. Because, Mr. Speaker, when you find that the now current chairperson of the African came with all these, just came with God, instead of advancing and saying, now that the elections are over, let us go together as one, what would you conclude on? My simple conclusion, there are differences in terms of our cultural upbringing will never help us be able to see that as a diversity, as adding diversity. But it will always show us as if we are different. There are people, ask them, well, they give advice different. Some of them will tell you, if you want to know whether somebody is rich, look at their hand, their 2 fingers. If this finger is longer than index finger, that means that person. So those ones will always believe like that. There's no way you can come and change and say, maybe it's just the way your bone structure is. They will believe that you are the rich person. I want that we focus now, Mr. When it comes to our foreign policy, I want us to focus on how we can be able to ease trade among our African countries. I want us to see how we can be able to utilize the Nile. You know, the source of the Nile is in the East Africa. It's the only river that goes up. How can you not control the source of your river? Control in Egypt. Ethiopia and Egypt fight over it. But the source of it is where? Uganda and Kenya. So really, it is time for us now to start asking ourselves, how are we going to benefit from our own resources? We cannot be slaves of our own resources. We now have to sit down and ask ourselves, now that we failed in making sure that we have Raila Amolo Odinga as a chairperson of the African Union, why don't we be thinking and bring it? Say, set up African that will look at policy, will look at our politics, at our economic affairs, and try to figure out how do we get this shock absorber. Hey, Mr. Speaker, when you hear a president taking up, I think the wise man who set up that, very wise, because they did not want the president taking up. They said, let us seek advice from an expert. That is why they sat. Now, start changing, also looking at home, close to home, East African community. It will be important, Mr. Speaker, that in the East African community, we achieve the goal of Kambaragine. We achieve the goal of Jomo Kenyatta. We achieve the goal of, what was the, what is his name? Milton Obote. Milton Obote. These are distinguished men who came before us. They are the ones who said, as a community, let us live. Here you spend time with the President of Uganda. The only thing he'll talk about, the ideas of Julius Nyerere, the ideas of Milton Obote, the ideas of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. Let us now bring this debate back home. Let us stop whining and saying, oh, we lost because of ABC. Let us build our East African community. Let us set up a commission here that will be able to guide us. We need to end poverty in Kenya. It is wrong, Mr. Speaker, for us as politicians. Every day you wake up in the morning, like 3 in the morning, and you just want to pray. You accidentally take your phone, mind you, subject that you want to pray about. First text message that comes is that, oh, Mheshimiwa, mother is very sick, I need X amount. You know? I long for the time when, in Kenya, no one will ever pick up a phone and send to a please help pay for my medical. Because our healthcare will work. You know, because our our education system will work. That is where we should put all our effort in this. And I believe that when we come together, Ruto, Amolo Odinga, working together, Senate and the nation, I think we, for once, be able to make a difference. I want to congratulate again, Excellency Lastly, take 30 seconds. Add more time. Really condone with the family. Keep two more, not keep two. This gentleman, whom I really knew very well, admired. I admired his reasoning. Comes to argument, has to do with family, together, ever.
Therefore, start later